to the Filmmakers podcast. This is a podcast about studio film and indie film and everything in between, and also documentaries. It's how to get them made and how not to F it up, in our very humble opinion. Of course, I am not Giles Alderson. I'm not even primo host Don Lenoir. I am lowly Phil Hawkins, writer-director of things, but most importantly, absolutely unashamedly, the winner of every single Xmas quiz we've ever had, because that's the way truth works at the moment. And because I say it's true, that means it's true. So why am I here? Why are we missing Giles? You know, this is where Giles usually does that bit of the podcast where he gives like some food for thought and motivational speak. I don't have any of that, apart from maybe listen to Sean Baker's speech about the state of indie film as a little tip. But yeah, why is it me? Well, we've got some very special guests. And of course, you probably clicked on this knowing what it is, but, you know, always good to have a bit of fun. So who do we have? We have, drum roll, Giles Alderson!
Oh my gosh, I'm here.
You're here. Welcome to the Filmmakers podcast.
Oh my God, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I've listened every week. I've always wanted to be on, and this is the best special day of my life.
And we also don't just have Giles Alderson. We have the excellent Dan Richardson.
Yeah!
Oh, thanks. I feel excellent, man. That's amazing.
So yes, the keys of the madhouse have been handed on to the lowly co-hosts while Giles and Dan pretend to be guests. But that's because they have now released their amazing documentary, Food for Thought, which is online now for free. On YouTube, which we'll get into because I've got questions about that. And yes, am I doing all right? All right, Giles, so far
I mean, you're
this thing?
way better than me already. And
I'll just listen to you. I'm trying to do the Giles intonation. It's not quite working.
I've got this weird intonation. Yeah, it's really
I love
odd.
It. No, it's great. So, guys, do we play a trailer? Are we doing that? Are you going to cut this out?
Should we play the trailer?
Let's play the trailer.
This will probably go down in history. No?
Here's a bit of food for thought. Is this really just a revolution? Or something much, much bigger?
There is a consciousness shift. There is a shift in mentality.
We would just have a group of people try the vegan diet for a 30-day period and let us know how it was.
I am diabetic, so I'm very interested to see what the vegan diet will do to that.
The energy is going to go right up the roof.
I rather like meat. A lot.
Resources get wasted, or meat production is just mind-blowing.
Only a real solution for the future is reducing our meat consumption and, if possible, eliminating it completely.
We can turn this around in a way which stops the biggest cause of animal cruelty on the planet.
You know that we wanted to rescue an animal in the documentary.
Have you got one?
I've got two, mate.
Say yes, we'll make it happen.
We're going to get them.
When?
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're going to the Good Heart Animal Sanctuary.
What would the world look like if everyone did go vegan?
January this year, I was cleared completely. I believe that is lifestyle choice.
It's an idea that people want to work. They want to be able to consume burgers, hot dogs, sausage, but they'd love to do it without all of these issues, right?
And it means that these guys don't have to be killed for it.
Do you want to survive or do you want to thrive? And you can have it all.
How old are you now, Roy?
86.
How's your health?
Never been better.
I used to make money. Now I lose it efficiently in the nonprofit world, trying to make the world a better place.
They started to see, oh, he's not dying.
So, it's like a well-oiled engine.
What a trailer.
Thanks.
There we go.
That was Dan, by the way. Dan, literally, we were trying to work out how we're going to do a trailer. We're thinking, should we ask someone? And Dan went, I'm just going to have a go. I'm going to have a go. And he pieced together an idea of what it could be, and we talked about it. And then he just sent something to me, and it was pretty much what you see now, and it's fantastic, and it's pretty incredible, really. Considering, we're not trailer editors, it was like piecing together your own work, seeing your own face and editing that, and he did brilliant.
Yeah, we'll get into it in a sec. I mean, let's wind the clock back. And I don't know how many years we're winding this back,
lot.
but maybe
Too many.
But maybe you can tell us about, because I think I knew about this documentary before I knew you, Giles. It feels like that way. I don't know. I think well, maybe I did. Maybe I did.
Do you
I don't know.
what?
But
you could be right. Wow.
But I think we'd either done an early podcast in that first wave of podcasts when, I certainly didn't know what I was doing. But and then, then I donated to the campaign. So, I'm waiting for my truckload of bounty to arrive.
Oh, gosh. What
at
did
some
you
point.
ask
I don't
for?
know. I can't remember. Who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah. So can you take us all the way back? How many years it's taken to get to this stage, and also why? I think is the most important thing.
Yeah. What's your excuse?
Well, no, why did it take that long? But also, why this? Why a documentary about veganism? And why that's important to you guys personally?
Well, I'll answer your questions in reverse. It's important to us because we're vegan. We're animal lovers, care about the planet.
Well, thanks for coming, everyone. That was great. Sorry, Dan, go on.
Yeah, we knew it would resonate. That's what we were aiming for. That's the longest watch time we've had so far.
No, I'm sorry. It's an old joke. Hey, and I'm not a meat eater either. But anyway, go on, Dan. Sorry.
So we just, it's an obvious choice for us because of being vegan and animal lovers. I just wanted to do something that made a difference. That's the thing that we've been talking about for years. We wanted to do something with meaning, something that makes a difference and serves a cause that we both care about. So it was an easy pick. The conversation around that started, it's got to be 2017, maybe even 2016, the conversation. Wow. Probably we've been talking about it. We've done a few projects together over the years since the first real big project we worked on together was The Harsh Light of Day, in which we were both actors
and
playing co-leads, in fact. And
yeah,
the conversation certainly didn't start for a few years, but it kind of over the course of by 2015, 2016, we were talking about what should we do? We've got to do something at some point, because I'd started my journey into filmmaking as well as acting, bought some cameras that I could in theory make my own stuff with, and it was Again, that conversation was always, let's do something with meaning. Let's just wait until we figure out that idea that clicks. And I think the original idea, we've talked about this a few times recently for obvious reasons, and I don't think either one of us can really remember exactly how it evolved into food for thought, other than I had this kind of epiphany one day where I thought, actually, someone else, they can make the film for us. If we just have a bunch of people go vegan for 30 days and then document it with a camera or a phone, send us those videos, it's essentially making the film for us. But we clearly, the film is a whole lot more than that now. But from that foundation, we built the whole idea. And from that point, I remember the very first conversation I had about the specific idea with Giles. It was like, yeah, 100%, we're in, let's do it. And that journey probably began in 2017. I outlined it, Giles budgeted it, and we put out a crowdfunder, and we've been working on it ever since, and it's just come out. But there are some good reasons for the length of time it's taken. Least not the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it was a proper, and that's an easy one, isn't it? 2.5 years we lost there, realistically. But it's a really good example of a proper, like, down and dirty grassroots film production, where there's just two guys with a bunch of camera gear and microphones who set out to make a film, and here we are a few years later, we've done it.
Because it could have been so easy just to go, we can finish it at some point, and not, and you guys, well, we get busy, things happen, we go make other things. But it's interesting that the kind of topic and the attitude around veganism has sort of grown as you're making the film, and that's sort of interesting how that kind of came across in the film to me. I mean, I loved it, as you'll probably know from my YouTube comments, and I'm a vegetarian. That's now, I was watching a documentary and it literally like things clicked in my brain about why am I doing this? Why am and we can all be a hypocrite about food, right? We can all be a hypocrite when we really kind of study our choices. But what I loved about the documentary, and maybe you can talk about this, is that it wasn't preachy. It wasn't like shock, like it wasn't like loads of shock value. There wasn't this whole thing like when you get a documentary like Seaspiracy, for example, which I think you show that to anyone and they'll just stop eating fish if they've got a soul. But no one wants to watch it because A, they know it'll be shocking, and B, no one wants that stuff in their head. And it's this disconnect between food and animals, which you guys do with such humility in a really funny and really endearing way. And I'm not just saying that because you're my mates and I watched it, but genuinely I started watching going, I need to watch this because, it's veganism and Giles and Dan's documentary. And then 20 minutes in, I was just like, let's go. So hats off to you to make a documentary that isn't, that is approaching the subject matter in an approachable way where you can show that to anybody. And it will move you and it will change you without resorting to cheap tactics, if that makes sense from my perspective.
And do you know that's so nice of you to say? And you're our target audience. It's something me and Dan talked about really early on. Who is the audience for this film? And of course, we want all staunch meat eaters to watch it and go, hey, I'm going to change right now.
Yeah.
We know that is few and far between. And we know that our audience are people who are thinking about it and are conscious of what they're eating, conscious of, how animals are hurt, during this whole process so that we can have a bit of meat or dairy. And we knew that if those people like it and watch it, they'll pass it on. And they're the kind of people we want to get, if a vegan says to you, hey, you should watch this documentary and you're not vegan, you kind of go, really? But if someone who's, in the middle says, actually, this really, really worked for me. It's like anything, isn't it? If someone recommends a certain film who doesn't like a certain genre and they say, no, actually, you will like this. You do.
Yeah.
But the reason we wanted to do it is, it's great, wonderful to make, dramas. I've loved doing all that. But like as Dan said, we wanted to make something that means something, deep in our hearts that hopefully will make a difference. And that's been the challenge. That's why it took so long, is because not only you're trying to piece together stories that you filmed ages ago and stuff that you're trying to make an arc, of a whole documentary and the ins and outs of it, which we can get into a little bit. But it was so important that we told a story that resonated and that was heartfelt, but also was myself and Dan. But that didn't come at the beginning, did it, Dan? It wasn't always going to be me and Dan, certainly not me in the documentary. It just evolved. It just, when we showed early cuts to people, or even the first trailer we made, Dan, when we did the crowdfunder, everyone said it's great, but it's very serious, didn't they, Dan? So we were like, let's flip this up and maybe have ourselves in it a little more.
Yeah, and all that's so fun. I mean, you guys together, obviously as old pals, but also just sending yourselves up. And I thought the opening was was very funny. Like, I was thinking, because obviously I know you, so I can see the humor, but I was thinking of people watching this going like, wow, these guys have no clue how to make something for about 30 seconds, but it's fun. It just makes you, yeah.
It does. We were slightly worried about that, and I, for one, was the last person to make that. Dan was like, "No, all in. Let's do this."
But it works though, because you know you're in safe hands after that. Like, it just makes you guys personable. So, do you think? Do you think the experience of, I mean, obviously, being actors as well, or I don't know whether you call yourself that anymore, Giles, but obviously it's in your soul and DNA. You can do that thing, but also as filmmakers, like drama filmmakers, did that help you inform the way to make this documentary in this way?
Oh, for sure. And I have to give it to Giles on as far as the shoot is concerned, and as far as directing it, really wholeheartedly and knowingly directing it. Giles knew what to capture in order for that to happen. So we have him to thank for the fact that we captured what we needed in order to have the choices in terms of where does the narrative take us, where does the story go. But it was really in the edit that we found it. And it's kind of what Giles was alluding to just now about even aspects of the film like the humor, which plays quite a significant role, and for good reason as well, because it is that lets people, it gives people permission to let their guard down. And it tells them from the word go, you're allowed to relax and enjoy this. And that wouldn't fit with a film that is then going to crush your soul with those kind of shock tactics that you talked about. So it's that sort of thing that found its way into the story or became a big part of the story in the edit, in the very early days when we'd start, not even necessarily editing it, certainly not beyond anything like a rough assembly, but just thinking, right, what do we got? Let's just review what we've got, and really with a view to thinking, what do we need to do next? What do we have to do on top of that? But it would be that would inform us. Oh, you know what? This would be a nice way to lean it slightly. Let's start to shoot it with that in mind more particularly. And that was really true of the joviality between us. And we're just really lucky because at the end of the day, what we are is two mates who enjoy each other's company and enjoy making films and have a good laugh doing it. So it wasn't like we actually had to do anything. We found this out because of the fact that, you're rolling cameras before you actually start doing I've come here because I'm going to talk to this person and all the formal stuff. And without fail, we're going to be goofing around at some point, and that's going to be captured on the cameras and the microphones. And that was that much of an accident. It was just like, hang on, this is the enjoyable part. Let's just chuck it in there, and let's. So it wasn't even we had to change anything. It was just now let's deliberately capture it, because all we got to do is just roll the cameras a bit earlier, and it's there.
And it's so
interesting that like leaning into that as. Because I don't think I'd know where to start with documentary filmmaking. I'm very narrative, shot list. I need my script. I need, and it's an interesting thing to see that you guys have leaned into that. And for me, that has become almost the key to its success, to make it so watchable. And then when you have certain moments that are really powerful, like, I don't want to do spoilers or not, but there's a particularly powerful moment, with you, Dan, watching something, and it's really moving because, I know you, but it's because we care about you guys, and that feels like expert kind of, drama storytelling, as it were, of like, okay, you've made us like these characters, these people. It's weird talking about his characters. I know these are you people, but what I mean to say is that sometimes the most powerful stuff is when you don't see it. And then when it goes to black, and it was really, that was really quite moving, and it I don't really have a bad word to say, and maybe that leans into my next question of like why YouTube, because this is I'd happily watch this on Netflix, and you could happily see this on those kind of things. And I know you both, can have those contacts, and you both released films in that way, and you both could push that and do that. But like, it seems like a real choice to release it in the way you've had. So I wonder whether you could kind of speak to that a little bit.
100%. You know how hard it is to distribute a film, get a sales agent attached, the paperwork, the ball ache behind all that. And what that does, even if you get through that stage, is it puts a paywall behind it. It also puts it in certain platforms that not everyone has. And I think it was so important for me and Dan that people saw the documentary more than anything else. And yes, of course, more eyeballs might get on it if it's on Netflix. More eyeballs might get it on if it was on Amazon. And we might still put it on those platforms. But for me and Dan, it was so important that people see it. And there was no excuses for, have you seen Seaspiracy, or have you seen, Dominion? Oh, where is it on? Oh, I haven't got that. We didn't want to do that. We wanted people to say, it's here, it's free, you can watch it, and you should watch it. We just didn't want to have excuses. And that was the most important thing about this. We wanted to make something that people could see, and that could then make a difference. So we always decided, it was something we said early on, Dan, wasn't it? We were going to self-distribute this movie. We didn't know how at the time, how we were actually going to do it, researched it, and really thought about the best way to do it. I just know how difficult it is. My last documentary that I produced, All Town Aren't We, was really tricky to do the distribution side. I spent 6 months doing paperwork. 6 months. I don't know if the returns are worth that. Certainly not for the producers, maybe the investors, but not for the producers. So on this, I was like, why would I spend 6 months doing paperwork, trying to get it to the right people, send it backwards and forwards, all this stuff? And not only that, you have to get the rights for every single thing. Now, when you're making a documentary, it's not that easy to get the rights for every single thing you're shooting. You have to cover your back. Me and Dan did that as much as possible. But at the end of the day, this was me and Dan. We had a help now and again, as Dan has said previously, maybe 5% of the movie's other people. And a big shout out to Robbie McCain, our editor as well. He did a lot of work on this. But in terms of shooting it, in terms of the paperwork, getting it out, it's just me and Dan. Yeah. We're busy. We're doing stuff. We've got to earn money and lives. So that aside, because that is part of it, but the most important thing was people watching the documentary.
That's really fascinating. I think hopefully a lot of people can get, take that advice on, because, Netflix isn't the be all and end all. It's like, who's your audience, right? And you've decided that you want the most people to watch this as possible, because catch this now before it's on 20 million views, guys, because it deserves to have that amount of views, and I think it has that sense that is very shareable, because it isn't so preachy and it is very entertaining, and there's a lot kind of to it, and that it's only people with experience that go like, well, at the end of the day, I'm not going to make money from it, so what is actually most important? And it's eyeballs and, communicating a message, and YouTube obviously being the best free source for that. I just think you should have got some more product placement, because I was writing down some of the brands that are in there, that some of those tasty meals and cheese.
Absolutely.
These guys need to be reaching out.
Yeah, well, when we do the sequel, we'll reach out beforehand and do that. But also, we didn't want it to feel unnatural and, hey, here's product placement in here.
No, of course. No, it all feels very genuine and user-generated, and it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, and the other thing we should talk about, and Dan should talk about this, is the crowdfunding side of it. So, maybe talk about that side of it as well, in terms of why it was easier for us to put it on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, we were so lucky, because every penny that was raised to make this film was donated, and often, not that it's it's a luxury problem if you have an investor. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have an investor, but if you have an investor, by default, an investor wants a return on that investment. And when it's a donation, when it's a crowdfunding exercise, then no one's expecting their money back. They're expecting their signed DVD or whatever it is that they've taken as a reward, or in many cases, just their generosity. There was no reward. It's just, here's the money, go make the film. Because they believe in the cause too, or because they support us, like you very kindly did. What that means, though, is that when the commercial considerations come to bear, essentially we haven't got any. We don't have to. We're not thinking now. We've got to make $100,000 back to pay the investors. So we've got to sell to Netflix, or we've got to sell to a streaming platform, or the airlines, or whatever it may be. We didn't have any of that to think about. So we were free to just think, all right, well, how do we serve our priority, which is to get it as widely seen as possible? The interesting thing is, I was thinking this while you guys were just talking about that principle of getting it out on YouTube and making it widely seen. It just goes to show the power of marketing, because ironically, there's no question we're right that YouTube makes it more freely available to more people, because they don't have to have a Netflix subscription or an Amazon or a Hulu or whatever it may be. But how do they know about it? How if we only had the folks who had a Netflix subscription, I guarantee have more views by now than we do on YouTube. Period. And that's because Netflix would have put it up and it would have been somewhat advertised and somewhat promoted. So our job now is, we're going to do it through ripple effect, because we simply haven't got the bandwidth or the manpower or even the know-how when it comes to the marketing of the film, but it's primarily the money, because it costs an awful lot of money. I'm sure that your average movie would spend more on marketing than we spent on the entire film.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Just a few
it's
billboards
usually the budget
in London
again, isn't it, Giles? That's usually what you say. It's kind of the budget again. So another 20 quid, which I'll happily give you.
Thank you. If you could put it on our PayPal,
not much.
But I think it'd be interesting, if there are sponsors listening. But I think it'd be interesting if there was some paid ad money. You could run some, TikTok kind of Instagram kind of advertising thing to kind of get eyeballs onto the bigger documentary and feed, shorter stories, for example, into the algorithm that help, YouTube grow. So there's definitely life and things to do. I mean, there's endless things that you can do. But I guess the good old sharing word of mouth is the important thing at this stage.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a community to lean upon because everyone's invested in it, in the sense that if they're in the vegan community, if they are themselves vegan, you don't get many vegans that think, oh no, I'm not bothered if other people are or not. And I know that kind of like strays towards the borderline of get out of my face, because I don't want to hear about it. All the jokes about vegans letting you know they're vegan before you have to ask and stuff. But the point I'm making is that if we go to the vegan community, which we are starting to do and have done all along, of course, because largely them that funded it as well, it's a tool for them. It's exactly what they're waiting for. Specifically, a gap filling tool as well, because where we've got the Game Changers and Seaspiracy and all of the documentaries we could list, this is different in the way that you very kindly described it. It's different. We know we've created something unique in the genre, so it's a gap filler in the sense that it's something else for people to say, here, watch this. And they can do it really comfortably as well. That's one of the key objectives we had, was make it something that people can say, there's no if, buts or maybes. You can watch this film. You don't worry if the kids are around, because there's no bad language, there's no slaughterhouse footage. Don't worry if you're anti that kind of slaughterhouse footage. There is none. All the tick boxes ticked, saying there's no reason not to watch it. And so, with that being the case, and with the fact that we've got a very invested community, the ripple effect should be easy for us. It certainly facilitates it. It's a limited marketplace. So there's I think it's only like 4 or 5% of the UK population, and probably less than that in the globe, are vegan. So it's a small community, but it's certainly going to help us. It's better than just two guys trying to do it.
Whenever you're making a film, or when you're thinking about a film, we always say this on the podcast, right? Who is your audience? And if you've got a niche audience, whether you're into BMXing or you're into, I don't know, model making, it's a niche audience. And we know we've got a niche audience. So as long as we target that audience, and the people who are in that world and they're very vocal in that world go, oh, I like that, they're going to share it with their community. And as long as we had that ripple effect, like Dan says, it's great. However, what's really important is knowing that and then tapping into it as well. So Dan being a really brilliant advocate for animal welfare anyway, being an ambassador for 7, 8 charities, and Born Free 11. 11, there you go. And Born Free being one of the, all right, Born Free being one of the...
Actually 12. Just went up one yesterday.
I can't even do the PTA. Have you got time for this, Dan?
It went up one yesterday. I love that.
I don't do anything. It just makes me feel good about myself.
But because of that, it gives Dan that voice.
Yes.
Sorry, dog was just barking. And because of that, we are tapping into that world, and we're making sure that we are putting in the right things out when we can. And it is hard work because it's me and Dan. But we've also got Strike Media involved to help us with some of the press as well, in terms of the interviews. But there are some vegan podcasts, so you target those. Again, the niche audience. If you've got an action film and you're trying to release that, target the action lovers, your Facebook, your algorithms there. You're literally going, action film lovers, who likes action films? Well, it's the same here. Who likes animals? Who likes plant-based foods? Who's thinking vegetarians? You're tapping into that market, and hopefully they will spread it. So it's just been clever with your film generally, but this one it was really important for us to go, hey, we've got a niche film here. Let's see how far we can push it.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously that kind of underdog message, I think you mentioned it in the film, Dan, about, the animals being the underdogs, and the style of it and the approach of it, and the how you've approached making it makes you guys sort of feel like the underdogs as well. And this feels very kind of grassroots and very approachable, and sort of the total opposite to this stigma or stereotypes of like vegans who smash things and break things. I think there's an interesting point of, you interview a woman on there who speaks to some of that. But it just feels like you're two very normal blokes that have chosen to do this simply for animals. And for me as a vegetarian,
soon to be vegan,
that, soon to be vegan. There was the first conversation like this morning with my wife. Really? I was like, why why is it that we, I don't drink cow's milk, and that was one of my hot topics, guys, actually, because I need some help on oat milk because I can't find one that I like. But sure. So it was a case of like, but then why do I have milk in something else? Because I can make the choice of getting eggs from down the road or my neighborhood chickens, and I know where they've come from and those animals are already looked after. But then when I'm out and I have a sandwich that's got egg in it, that's probably going to be from the worst egg, thing. Or same with dairy. It's like, I'm sort of being a hypocrite in my own kind of choices slightly. But what I liked about it was that I think you guys or someone else said that was like, you don't have to be cold turkey straight away. Like it's the small choices that lead to the bigger changes. And it's, and again, because you've not done this in your face shock value, because you've done it with humor and it's entertaining, like that stuff really rises to the surface for me and makes me personally question my own choices, because I'm a vegetarian because of animal welfare. And I used to be, I grew up in my mum was like, if meat's not on the plate, I'm not providing for my kids. And they'd rather be meat than vegetables. And I think I was probably 21 until I realized that a salad was a meal and actually is great. I was like a McDonald's a day kind of guy, honestly. Wow. And now I've been, vegetarian for a long time. So, and even now I'm still thinking about those choices, and this documentary really. So I think that audience feels like it was me, or it spoke to me. Maybe that's what all great documentaries do. It feels like they're speaking to you, but it definitely spoke to me as someone that's made kind of the big leap, to take meat away. And now he's like, well, actually, it's only maybe a small amount of changes that I can do to make, you converted me. Look, what's happened?
Yes,
what's happening?
I mean, look,
that's another one.
But it did open my eyes. And do you know what? One of my favorite, and if you do a spin-off show or if you want to just release the rushes and I'll pay money for it. Okay, I thought Dan, who was one of your vegan contributors, how great was he? I mean,
you're thinking of me. There was no Dan. I think there's
Tony. Sorry, Tony.
Oh, Tony.
Wasn't he?
He's
brilliant.
Tony's perfect.
I thought he was called Dan
brilliant.
in time. I apologize, Tony, if you listen to this. Tony was great. Like, and he was just like the man, like the voice of like everyone, and he was great. I could watch him for days. So I think there's a spin-off in that from my perspective.
Totally agreed. It was fascinating that it was his, he said being conned by the wife, to do this challenge. Yeah. And he was just so into, because he was a chef and he cooks meat all the time. And, when we first got that footage back, we all said we can't use it because the sound was so bad. Quality was so bad. But we just treated it. I just put it through Auphonic, which is a fantastic site for treating audio, by the way, everyone, auphonic.com. No, they're not sponsoring the show. It's just brilliant. We treated it and then we played with it and suddenly you could hear what he was saying clearly. And it's fantastic. And he's fantastic in it. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, how you're getting someone who's a staunch meat eater that by the end, and look, there's no spoilers here or whatever, but by the end he's saying the opposite and saying he hates the smell of meat. And and he was just a normal bloke who would hate being on camera as well. He's like, I'm not doing this, don't like it.
That's the key, isn't it? That's the key. It's like you just said, Phil, it's the fact that he was so relatable. Yes. He's your everyman. He's so many of the guys that would never, ever contemplate watching a vegan documentary. If we can get them as far as for when Tony makes his first appearance, they'll probably stick around. He's one of my favourite characters. They're all my favourite characters because we're covering the breadth of society. We're not looking for a specific demographic. That's the purpose of some of our featured guests, if not all in some way, but absolutely all of our vegan participants are designed to be someone that everyone out there can relate to. And Tony is so relatable, as are the rest of them to other people. But Tony is that guy that you never would have dreamt he'd even been doing it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. No.
And here he is, and he's so entertaining. And effortlessly, he doesn't know he's entertaining.
No, he doesn't, and that's
absolutely brilliant.
That's so funny.
So
isn't it? The premiere was amazing. The premiere was so funny in those moments.
Love him.
And when vegan participants came back again, So it was like, oh, we'd seen them the first time, we got used to them. And then later on, you go, oh my God, they're coming back. Oh my God, I can't wait to see what they're going to say next. What's going to happen to them? And that was a real delight. We tried to get him to come to the sanctuary as well.
I would have loved to have seen him hug a cow.
I would
that would have been great. But he's so genuine, and his video in the car, like one of his last ones and stuff. Yeah. I mean, go watch it. I mean, go watch it for a lot of reasons, but just go watch it for Tony. He was such a joy.
I agree.
So, it's shot in Croatia, South Africa, Los Angeles, like over the UK. You know, I know you did some crowdfunding, but I mean, how did you do this? It's like a sort of globe-trotting like Bond film. This thing, it has a lot of scale. So
that's for the poster.
Yeah, there you go. I wish I could think of a vegan pun and a Bond title now. But yeah, like, how is that something that you plan for? Is that something you thought we just got to go and do this thing? Like, how that's the question I had.
We were very lucky because. And actually, there's other countries that didn't make the cut that we captured footage in as well. Because when we were doing our jobs, like, for example, we were in Sweden, another project Giles and I worked on together. We were on a TV project in Sweden, and we filmed some stuff for Food for Thought there as well. It just didn't make the cut. And I can't even remember why, to be honest. But a lot of the time, I was in LA shooting a film for a while. And we did have to then, of course, fly Giles out for a period of time, but it was only one of us, not two of us. With the South Africa trip, I was already in South Africa, and that was actually just me. Giles didn't make it South Africa because we couldn't justify the cost and didn't have the money anyway. But I was there with the Born Free Foundation doing a lion cub relocation, of course, as you do.
As you do.
And so
just
I was
a random Wednesday for Dan.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, you would just piggyback on the trip that you're already making and use it as an opportunity to film for Food for Thought, which is what we did every opportunity we possibly could. And with Croatia, we were very lucky with Croatia because it centers around, well, even you wouldn't even know it. Watching the film, you're introduced to this vegan festival that takes place in Zagreb in Croatia. But little will the audience know that actually everything we did was sort of circling around geographically and in terms of the people we met at that festival, which was all organized in advance for us by a group that is also featured in the documentary that have a farm to table restaurant and an organic supermarket and a bookshop and various other things. Wonderful group of people who set everything up for us in Croatia, and it sponsored us.
Wow.
So they put us up. So we didn't have to cover the costs of Croatia, which was incredible because it forms such a huge part of the film, and so many of our guests. And we were there for the period of, I think, maybe 4 or 5 days, and that throughout that entire 4 or 5 days, it was back-to-back interviews and at the vegan festival capturing more generic sort of B-roll footage. But so other than getting Giles out to Los Angeles, I don't think we actually had a whole lot of our budget going on travel.
Wow.
Which is just as well, because it'd still be unfinished.
Yeah, that's we just planned it like all my other films or projects or documentaries or corporates or whatever the hell I've made over the how many years I've been doing this. And we just did the same thing. When people helped us and organized it, and then we would go, okay, cool, well, we need about this much time here, then we can get some B-roll footage, we could do this. And we just wrote it all down and we planned it as much as we could, knowing how difficult it was going to be. And then other things just happened, like Mislav, the bodybuilder. That just happened. There was other moments then we got to go to his gym and film with him. And there were some other moments that just happened. There were so many moments that we didn't make the cut as well. You know, if you imagine making a documentary, that's another reason why it took so long. The amount of footage that isn't in there, that didn't make the cut, or characters that, I mean, some were beautiful and made us cry and were in the first versions and kept in. And then eventually we just went, just doesn't work for story. Just doesn't work for what this documentary is saying. We just had to, and it hurts to take certain people out, because if they're going to be in at the beginning, they kind of need to be at the end, or we place them throughout, and you're like, who's telling this story the most? And yeah, that was it. I think that was really interesting for us to plan it. And then certain things we storyboarded as well. There were certain bits we went, well, we need to get these shots. And I say storyboard, it was me drawing stick figures in the book and going, Dan, this is what we need to capture. But still, we planned that in a kind of, okay, if we get this footage, then it will cut together. Okay, we'll get this and we'll. So there was a lot of planning behind it, but there was also a lot of let's see what happens. And again, when we were in the edit, that's when we went, right, we still need to capture this. We still need this. Let's put a bit more of this in. Does that old footage, can we slip that in there? And just took a lot of backwards and forwards with myself, Dan and Robbie of just going through it and going through it and going through it and hacking at it for ages.
I've got to say,
I don't know how you've done it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's that point I made right back at the beginning about Giles really knowing his way around directing a film going into the shoot. One of the key things I was referring to in that regard is what Giles has just been alluding to. A principle that he applied throughout was we shoot everything and anything, everywhere we're traveling to. If I was picking him up from the station to do a day of shooting, he'd say, get your camera rolling and film me as I come out the station. I'm going to film from the other direction, coming out of the station and seeing you in the car. And I was like, dude, chill out. And he's absolutely right, because that's the gold that ties the story together. It gets us from place to place. That's a huge, huge tip for any filmmaker, is just shoot, especially a documentary, shoot everything, everyone, every angle. It's a lot to trawl through, but my God, it's valuable.
You need your bits going from one scene to the next. It's so important. I think just generally as a filmmaker, but certainly in a documentary, at the time you think, no, I'm never going to use this. This isn't going to work. But even if it's just a moment of it, you'll be so grateful. I'll shoot out the window of the car. I'll turn it on to Dan on the car. I'll ask him questions, because that footage, most of it made it in because it's traveling shots. And you need that to get from one location to the next. And most people just go, we'll just do an interview and then another interview. But if you haven't got anything in between, you just cut in between people talking.
Yeah, and then you lose that personality, which is, what I've said is that I feel is the key to it. You know, it's seeing you guys go on this journey rather than it just be a journey of kind of interviews.
You know, actually, a brilliant example of that Giles is just talking about, I have to say, there's two people we interview about their health, very, very profound health implications of a vegan diet for them. And one of them, not that you'd necessarily know it, one of them's in Los Angeles, one of them's in London. And it's literally back-to-back interviews. And there's a scene or a clip I shot with my phone out of the plane window as we came back in, or I came back in over London. I don't even know which flight it was.
I don't remember.
So I had some aerial footage of London, and it's probably about 2 seconds long. And that gets us from the guy in LA to the woman that we interview in London. And it really works. And it's a piece of phone footage out of a plane window. So it really does make that point. It's invaluable.
Yeah. And as much as Dan's bigged me up, he really knows cameras. He has been a photographer for many years as well. So, you know, we're both bigging each other up. But at the same time, Dan really, really helped with so much of the camera and how it should look. And so it was a joint effort as much as being very kind to me. It was also, we did this together. Dan directed so much of this movie. It's a 50-50 thing, the whole thing is. So, and he was so much more experienced on certain things. We just talked about it and we just said what is working for us and not. That's, again, another reason why it took so long, is because you don't know what works. And even if you're putting together a short, 20-minute version, you're like, well, yeah, but, and again, which bit of the interview should you use and should you not use, you know? And if someone's repeating the same story later because it's similar, well, you go, okay, we're going to have to lose one of them, but we like that character, we like that person, we like that angle. What else are they saying? Even, like, I think it was a day before the premiere, we were still cutting bits in. We're literally cutting bits in. I was doing the sound mix like an hour before the premiere.
Really? No, for real? That's not an exaggeration. It's true.
No. So before your very expensive PR team kicks me out from talking to you because they're bugging me, as usually, where are these nice coffees that Dom gets all the time?
Yeah,
These cakes, guys.
He's in a nice hotels.
I don't get that.
And stuff.
Do you want to speak to doing the premiere and the kind of gala event and that side of it? Because it was such a huge event and a big success and lots of people being there. And was that always part of the strategy? Like, if you want to impart a little bit of advice to someone here that maybe has a documentary or thinking about the big plan, how did that kind of come about, the idea to do that kind of event?
I think, yes, we always wanted to do it from the start. I mean, I think that's one of the gifts you can give yourself as a filmmaker. You know, maybe that just strokes your ego a little bit, or maybe not, depending on how it goes down, so to speak. But it might be an absolute disaster that you end up wishing you hadn't done.
I've seen those. I've been to those ones. Oof.
Yeah, I've been to a couple. Yeah, and snuck out. But it's. I think we always planned on doing it. In fact, we did plan on doing it. I know that because we sold rewards in the crowdfunder of sponsorship of the premiere events. We didn't know what they'd be or where they'd be or when or how, but we just knew it was going to be an important part of it. And it's such a celebration of what you've achieved at that point. And so we knew we'd do it. And then the actual logistics of doing it, it was a very unorthodox premiere, if you like, because we hosted it at the Royal Geographical Society, which is not a cinema.
Yeah.
And the obvious place to host a premiere would be a cinema, but it's an auditorium that seats 700 people, which it's actually the epicenter, if you like, in London for the wildlife conservation, natural world movement. And so it's a really obvious place to host anything that's anything to do with animals, and our film is. So we decided to do it there quite early on, but my goodness, is it an expensive venue. So now you're looking at the need. You've got to fill the place because you don't want it to be, it's a 700-seat venue, as I say, but luckily by the time you're at about 300 people, it does start to feel pretty full because of the way it's laid out. It's kind of hard to explain, but it does feel full. And we ended up with about 400. But you're kind of trying to strike the balance between giving tickets away because you need people there, and of course giving tickets to people who've helped you make the film. And that's a lot of people, even though they weren't involved in the actual production. There's a whole bunch of people made it possible. And then of course the support group around you that you want there. And at the same time thinking we got to sell tickets. And we got to try and sell enough tickets to break even at the very least, and hopefully make some money, because we actually partnered with a couple of charities for no other reason than we wanted to give them some profit if there was any.
Yeah.
And
that word of mouth that's come from it, because I heard people went to it, and people that did the live event on YouTube were like, I watched this, I was at the premiere and I'm watching it again, so it definitely had an impact kind of in that way.
Yeah, indeed. And my God, it was, we were blessed. I mean, you can only do so much, and you can do it all right as well in terms of the logistics and the organization. And we had a red carpet, we had a step and repeat board. We did the things that you should do for a premiere to make it special. But you can do that, and you don't have any right to expect an atmosphere as such at a film premiere, because it's about the film. An atmosphere is something you get at a party, and this premiere event carried with it an atmosphere which was commented on almost as much as the film. And we were blessed with that, because it was just I think it was the fact that it was a gathering of people who all cared about the cause, or us, or both. And it was such a special evening. And you can't plan for that. You can't pay for it. It either happens or it doesn't. And we were really lucky because it happened.
Yeah, it'll live forever in my heart, my soul, my memory of what an amazing feeling it felt. And I've never felt that at any of my other premieres. It's always felt good and wow, we're doing it. But
that's interesting. Can you speak to that a bit more, Giles? Because it feels like, obviously, from maybe, I was going to say maybe it's your longest project, but probably not, because indie films take a very long time, but maybe your longest filming period, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, why is that feeling? I'm curious, as someone that is, very successful doing narrative film and very good at that and that kind of stuff of it, of like, you've done a lot of great premieres and a lot of lovely movies. So what about making this documentary gives you that feeling, I suppose?
I think it's because this is so important to me. And like I say, when you're making films, it's someone else's opinion. Here, I didn't really mind what they thought. Like, okay, we know the film's got holes. We know some of it was shot on an iPhone or a Canon 4D, and
nobody cares.
A big mix. That's the thing. Nobody cares. So I knew that I'm trying to say something important. I knew that I was getting a message out that I care about massively. And look, if people didn't like it, all right, I'll deal with that. But at the end of the day, I know that the message is in there. When I've got a narrative film, people are judging in a very different way. because they're judging you, or if it's not good enough, or they don't like it. Here, I didn't mind if they didn't like it. I mattered if it resonated with them and made a difference. So I think that's why. I think certainly after the first 5 minutes and everyone was laughing, I relaxed, even though I don't know if anyone else gets this at their own premieres, but my hands go like clampy and I can't open them. And I feel like I am going to like explode with some sort of adrenaline. It's crazy. Literally, I feel like a crab. My fingers go clamped together and I can't get them apart. Anyway, and again, we've got to speak afterwards. Me and Dan are doing a Q&A after this, and a big one as well. So it's like, oh gosh, in front of so many people standing up on stage talking about important, passionate things, not just how did you shoot it, Hey, we had a great time with the actors.
Yes.
This was me and Dan, and it was me and Dan on screen as well. And it's you. I don't know. I just felt it the best I've ever felt at one of those screens. And there's so many parts that you still look at and go, oh my God, of course. But in terms of that feeling, it was incredible. But we put as much effort into the premiere as we did filming it, as we did the crowdfunder. Now, each one of those, I feel for filmmakers listening, is so important and vital. You plan, you get right, you think about. We really planned the premiere. Like as much as we planned the crowdfunder, we did a week on plant-based living, we did a week on animal agriculture, and we did a week on, I can't remember what else, when we were doing the crowdfunder. So everything was targeted, who we were targeting it to and what we were doing within that. And when we're filming, we planned it, as much as we could. The edit, we really went through. And then with the premiere, we thought about how we're going to do this. What time is it happening? What does Step and Repeat looks like? Dan had a genius idea of putting ourselves on that poster on the Step and Repeat board. Me and Dan have talked about this and how I struggle by putting myself on the poster anyway. But Dan was like, no, it's about us. We should do this. I just struggled because it's me. I know Dan's leading the film, but I struggled with it. So then to do it on the Step and Repeat board, at first I was like, I don't think we should do this. But it was so genius because it meant that it wasn't just a random photo someone's putting up on IMDb and there's a load of sponsors behind every Step and Repeat board. Who knows what premiere they're at? It clearly says food for thought and it clearly shows me and Dan on the screen. So people go, oh yeah, I know that film, or what is that film? So that was genius and a really clever way to do it. But yes, we really planned the premiere. We really thought about who was going to be there, what time they would turn up. And again, with Stripe Media organising it as well with us, so we could really enjoy it. And I think that was another thing as well. We had a great team so that I could go, oh, I don't have to worry about it, which made it massive. Whereas I think all the others, I've been planning proper, what time do people get there? How do I do? This one was, once the night was happening, was, well, just sit back, relax, say hello to everyone. And I think that's why.
It's great. I mean, it's lovely to hear you talk about that, the entrepreneurial spirit of filmmaking that, doesn't just apply to the business plans and the sales agents and the EIS schemes and the tax breaks and all this stuff that we go on about on the podcast about, indie film. It's like you guys taking all that experience and rolling that into, a documentary in both its planning, shooting and also release. Is that never quite goes away, I suppose. And that's I think anyone listening who's thinking about making a documentary is certainly opening my eyes about, documentary filmmaking, because I've never really done it. So I find it quite interesting to hear you guys talk about it in that way. I think that's very kind of valuable advice for our listeners, as Giles would say, in this chair. There's also there's like a proper hosting chair as well I'm in. And Giles is on the little child seats. If you can picture that.
It's true. I am on the child seat.
Maybe don't picture it. I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. Yeah, it's probably not best.
And, I think as well, just speaking to that, and maybe you've answered it and that's fine, but what was that guiding light for you guys to never let this go? And also maybe know when it was finished, I guess, I suppose. When, when you've got investors and you've got a release date and stuff, then, they say, oh, film's never finished, just taken off you. But in a documentary like this, you could still be going on and making it. So what was it? Why now? Like, why is it that it came out now? And what was that guiding light that kept you going for so long? That'd be interesting to know.
God, I mean, embarrassment We wanted to make sure we weren't
definitely that.
We couldn't risk being so embarrassed to tell people, and the threat of legal action as well. We didn't want to,
I'm sorry about that. I just when I give you £5, I need to know. I need to know where it's gone.
Yeah, that was the guiding light. No, but also there was never a question. Joking aside, we would never have not got the film finished. But it was a strange balancing act between that lovely phrase, which I'll probably butcher, which says something about don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. It's a hell of a difficult thing to apply when you're a filmmaker and you're like, yeah, but there's going to be 400 people watching it in one go, and then it's going out on the interwebs, and we want 1 million people to see it. So you kind of want to make sure it is really close to as perfect as you could get it. But you're balancing that with we didn't want to. We always said all the way through this, we want to get it right rather than get it out. Because we could have rushed it, because it did get to the point of, and I mean this sincerely, it got to the point of we were kind of embarrassed. We were a little bit cringy, and it's like, oh my God, like how patient are our crowdfunders that they've waited all these years, and we've only got in all that time we've only got a couple of people say, oh, what's happening with Food for Thought then? Well, that's if they even remembered the title at that point, you know. It was, and so we really were determined to get the film out, but we had to get it right. Because all those objectives we had, it's got to be relatable, it's got to be different, it's got to carry a message, it's got to be accessible, all tick, 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 tick. Where if we hadn't got one of those ticks in the box, it still wouldn't be out right now. And I personally think there was a hint of that at the premiere, where we start that magical feeling that we had, which is really hard to explain, as Giles said. It's like you can't even really put your finger on a tangible thing and say it was this. But I have a feeling it was like this, almost this subconscious knowing, because of the energy in the room, and especially after the film. The venue stayed open late for us, which they never do, because of the fact that the energy in the place was just so magical, and people were using the red carpet and taking their own photographs for an hour and a half after the film finished. We were supposed to be out the building an hour earlier than that by a contractual obligation. Yeah, and the building staff were just saying, no, this is awesome, stick around. And I think there was something, it carried this energy with it. And for me, I think that was because we'd taken the time to get it right. And a guiding light was that it's too important to get it wrong, because it's not just for us. It's not just our ego. It's not just sparing the embarrassment. It's a cause. If we get this right, we could change lives. And you very kindly made that comment yourself at the beginning. It has actually changed some people's lives, and really unexpected people as well, where we never thought we could reach them. And so for sticking with it, I think it's paid off.
The other thing we did was we put a date on it. I mean, I think and the embarrassment thing is a thing. It actually is. You know, I think COVID it happened. So as much as that's a thing that did stop it, it's also an excuse. Being honest, it did stop it. However, we could have ploughed on, but then me and Dan would get work. And that's the thing when you're doing a documentary, you can't just tap in for 20 minutes and go, oh, let's have a little look at this edit. Let's try and look at this. Because by the time you've done that, Premiere Pro's just opened up and you've got to now close it all back down again, you know. Especially with this old drive and trying to edit it on a crappy old laptop, which is, essentially what I did in the end.
With 17 different file formats.
And it just, the amount of times Premiere Pro would crash on me and just, you'd be like, that better have saved, please let that save. And it would drive me insane. Me and Dan were literally working on Zoom together, and we were sharing the screen, and the amount of times it would just spin, the ball would spin for one tiny little edit, or trying to just trim a little cut or anything. You'd just be like a minute later pulling your hair out. So there was so much of that stopped you. However, that's an excuse. I think once we then said, right, 2025, January/February, during the sort of veganuary time, and I think it was around summer, end of summer, we both just went, that's it now. This is it. Let's work towards this. Let's put a day on it. Let's announce it. And we announced it. And as soon as we announced it, it made me and Dan do it. Because we did a Facebook Live on our Food for Thought live page on Facebook. And as soon as we'd done that, we went, oh my God, it's real. We've now got to kick our asses and actually do this. So thankfully, me and Dan were working, but it was manageable work where we weren't suddenly going off somewhere else for 6 months and had to fully, we could do this on weekends and in the evenings and go, let's get it done. And that was vital. I think putting a date on it, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but putting a date on it made me and Dan finish it because we announced the date. Now you got to finish it, guys. Why aren't you? You've told us the date. Everyone got excited. Well, I say everyone. Certain people got excited. We're like, right.
We
The
all
whole world got excited.
Also, because now you can stop talking about the dare.
You brought it up.
I said it.
Didn't even do my intro.
Yeah. No, I was going to, but I thought I wasn't going to go there. It was a low blow. It's a low blow.
That's brilliant.
Well,
How dare you?
It'll never
guys,
happen.
That's worse.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations.
Thanks, man.
I just think everyone should go and see it, even if you're kind of curious, even if you think it's not for you. It's so entertaining and so fun. And, you know, what Netflix would try and do in a 7-hour documentary over 3 series, you guys do it in a tight 90, is it? Or something?
90,
it's
pretty much,
yeah. And it's free. And if you can watch something that's free, that will change the way you look at the world, I think that's a gift that is, you know, worth sharing and worth spending the time to watch. And I encourage everyone listening to this to go do that right now or whenever they can. But yeah,
very kind.
Anything else you want to add, guys, before I
link to that is in the show notes, I think is what you wanted to say.
There you go.
Yeah, we've got our website as well, foodforthought.doc.com. That'll have various bits and pieces on it over the coming months as well. Really exciting stuff going up on their blogs and help for people who want to, you know, transition or are thinking about even just want more information. And yeah, also, if you do like it, as we always say on the podcast with anything, go onto IMDb and give it a rating. Give it, you know, say something nice on our YouTube as well. It really, really is unbelievably important to do with whatever you like in life. If you like something, tell people you like it, and in this case, please do. It'll help the algorithms and help it grow.
Absolutely, yeah. Guys, congrats. Thanks for joining me on my Filmmakers podcast, which obviously I've worked tireless on for years.
Thanks, Phil. I've always wanted to be a guest on your podcast, mate.
And Giles, and thanks for coming on. You've been elusive. We've tried to get you on for years, and now you're finally here.
I'm
going to hand this back now. I can't handle the pressure. I can't remember what the end is. Something about an elevator.
Yeah,
send the elevator back down.
Go on, do it. Try it. If you're lucky enough, here we go.
No, that bit. Isn't there a word? Isn't there a sentence into it?
Yeah, you can do. You know, you're all indie filmmakers support each other. I just make it up every time, but it's the elevator bit is the only bit I kind of.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, you know, and guys, if you want to go out there and make a documentary and change the world, then you can do that. And if you're lucky enough to do well, you need to send the elevator back down.
Yes.
No.
Ding ding ding. That's exactly
it.
Pretty much.
I've ruined in the last 30 seconds. I've ruined
Mate,
it.
I'm in tears here. I don't know about how you can think you've ruined it.
I hand
I'm
the
about
crown
to make another
back.
documentary.
I hand the crown back to Giles and Dom. Enough pressure for one evening for me. Guys, thanks for listening. And thank you, Giles.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Phil.
Go watch it right now.
Okay.
We'll see you next Tuesday, because that was a joke.
And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Hey.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.